Welcome to Session 3, Video 1. We're covering Chapter 4 this week, and Chapter 4 really focuses on one single, really important concept that is fairly easy to explain, much more difficult to put into practice in reality, which is why if you take a look at this week's special topics discussion, I'm actually asking you to start thinking about applying this particular tool in terms of a business that you choose. This topic is all about understanding the marketing environment. And why this is important is because if you are running a business, it is vitally important that you understand what's going on in the world around you so that you can take advantage of opportunities that may present themselves or help protect your business and your organization against any risks that might arise. So when we're looking at the environmental forces, we're looking at factors um, outside of marketing that may affect the marketing management's ability to build and maintain successful relationships with the target market. So looking at the environment around you, it's not about looking uh, at at your products. It's not about looking at the processes that you undertake, the manufacturing processes or the operational processes. It's about looking at those things very often outside your span of control, but that nonetheless have an influence or a potential impact on your organization. And there's really two broad ways to categorize environmental factors or ways to look at environmental factors. And the first is taking a look at the microenvironment, forces or trends that are relatively close to the company and that have a direct uh, impact on the company. They can be internal to the organization, but outside of the realm of marketing, and also or can be external to the organization but close enough that they have a very direct connection to the organization. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in just a moment. In comparison to the microenvironment, the macro environment includes those external forces that can impact other industries or the industry that you're in a much sort of more removed way, meaning these factors don't necessarily tie directly into the day-to-day activities and experiences of a company, but can nonetheless have an impact on the organization. And again, we're going to go over these in much more detail in just a moment. So if you take a look at the macro environment, again, those factors or trends or influencers that are relatively close to the organization, you can look at the company itself, in particular the company's leadership. They may work and operate outside the realm of marketing, but their activities can have a very significant and direct impact on the marketing activities in an organization. So things like the company's leadership, what their priorities are, what their leadership styles might be, all those things can have an impact on marketing decisions. The suppliers with whom your organization works with on a regular basis, the people that you buy your raw materials from, you need to know what's going on with them. It is critical to understand what's going on with your suppliers so that you can plan for any challenges that might arise or take advantage of any opportunities that might present themselves. For example, if you are in the restaurant business and your suppliers are local farmers in the community, it's important to know whether or not they're having a good year, meaning that there's a bumper crop and you're going to have access to the fresh produce that you're looking for. If you are working, if you part of your business is requires the use of steel, for example, it's important to know how the steel suppliers that you buy your products from or your raw materials from, how they're doing. Is business booming? Is there plenty of steel available? So it's really important to know exactly how your suppliers are doing in their business and what kinds of things are going on in their business worlds, because those things may actually end up impacting you. Marketing intermediaries, the people downstream from you who are part of the way in which you get your products into the hands of consumers. So if you sell your products to a retailer, for example, it's important to know what's going on with that retailer. It's important to know if that retailer is having a good year, if that retailer is experiencing success and making some money. It's important to know if that retailer is struggling and maybe going out of business, maybe looking to reduce the amount of goods and services that they purchase from you. It's really important to know what's going on with the people who are part of the value chain that you are ultimately providing to your customers. Of course, we sort of generally recognize that it's important to know what's going on with our competitors, to know what kinds of new innovations and products are they introducing to the marketplace. Are they having success? Do they seem to be growing? Do they seem to be thriving? Or do they seem to be struggling? What are some of the strategic directions that they appear to be taking, and why are they taking those directions? Is it an opportunity that we ourselves have missed and they're ahead of us, or have they made a big mistake and we can learn from those mistakes? That's really important to follow as well. Publics. Publics are those groups outside the organization that have a vested interest in our performance. So it could be the community in which our business operates. Even if the people in the community aren't necessarily our direct customers, they are in fact impacted by our business practices, because we may employ them, we may be getting rid of waste in their community, so that may have an impact on them. It's also important to understand our customers and what's going on in their lives, what's changing for them, what's working for them, and those sorts of things. We already talked a little bit about marketing intermediaries, your resellers, your distribution firms, the marketing service agencies that work with you. It's really important to know, for example, if you have a big marketing campaign that you're planning to launch, it's important to know if your marketing agency is going to be able to do the work that you need to do in a timely manner and help you get your plans off the ground. So it's really important to know what's going on with your intermediaries and partners that you work with. Going back to Publix, uh, banking institutions, knowing what's going on with your banks. Are they increasing rates? Are they lowering rates? Are they offering special incentives to support local businesses? What is the media saying about you and your industry and your competitors? What's going on with them? Do you have a good relationship with the various media in your community, or do you have a tenuous or stressful relationship with them? How do you get along with the various government departments with whom you may have to interact? Um, are they supportive of your business and your business objectives? Do they support what you're trying to do? Or are they putting in place obstacles that you're going to end up having to deal with? What about community groups? What's going on with them, and how might those community groups and their actions have an impact on your business? For example, if there's an environmental group in the community that is protesting, um, you know, waste in the water system, and that happens to be something that you have done in the past or you continue to do, you may want to be aware of what's going on with those various citizens groups. The legal communities, are there going to be changes to the legislation that you need to be aware of to make sure that you're adhering to the law, or make changes to your business practices to make sure that you continue to be in adherence with the law? And just the general public in general, the community in which you operate, again, can have a vested interest in what's going on in your business, and you may want to know what's going on with them. When it comes to the macro environment, this is a bit more, I guess, well known. This is a more popular aspect of the environmental analysis. And there's a whole bunch of different ways or terminologies that can be used to describe the macro environmental analysis. You may hear words in other classes like a pest analysis, PEST, or a PESTLE, PESTLE analysis. Basically, all these are different words for a macro environmental analysis. So taking a look at those forces outside or external to your organization that may in fact have an influence on what your business decides to do. So things like changing demographics, changes in the population. We're going to get into those in a bit more detail in a moment, but anything about the demographic aspects of your target audience or the environment in which you are operating your business, if there's changes to those demographic factors, it's important to understand those. Understanding the economy and the various components of the economy or measures in the economy and how those are changing and how they might impact your business. And again, we'll give some more examples of those in a minute. The natural forces and access to natural resources. For certain industries, it's incredibly important. If you are in an industry that requires a supply of lumber or requires a supply of fish or minerals or other natural resources, that might be something that's important for you to understand. Technology is increasingly relevant to almost every different type of business. It can be technology in terms of how people communicate. It can be technology in how products are made. It can be technology in terms of operating efficiencies. It can be technology in terms of transactional, meaning how people make purchases. Technology is an incredibly important aspect of an environmental analysis. Political forces, understanding the various political parties and their positions on really key issues that impact business is very important. Political would also include, we mentioned it in microanalysis as well, things like changes in legislation or regulation and how those are going to be enacted and enforced. For example, changes to the minimum wage rate. Well, if you're a business that pays people in your organization minimum wage, the fact that government is looking at increasing the minimum wage rate actually can have a very substantial impact on your business, and you want to really understand that. And then there's cultural forces. How is society itself changing and shifting? What are the norms? How are people spending their time? Those sorts of things are really important to understand as well. And we're going to go into these in more detail right now. First of all, demography is actually the study of human populations, looking at things like age, gender, racial and ethnic profiles, those sorts of things. And there's actually a wealth of information out there that's readily accessible to people like you and me to tell you not only about what is the current situation in terms of the human population, whether it's in PEI or in the region or in Canada or even in fact around the world, but it also will tell you how that's changing. So just a raw number doesn't tell us a whole lot. What's really important actually is how these numbers are changing over time and what those changes might mean and represent for an organization and what those opportunities might be. For example, one of the most important demographic trends that's occurring in Canada is the fact that our population is aging. Not across the board. There are certain segments of the Canadian population that is in fact aging, but there's actually some segments of the population that are actually getting younger. For example, the Aboriginal community in Canada is actually on average substantially younger than the average population of non-Aboriginal people. The fact that Canadians are in fact an aging demographic in general is both an opportunity for some businesses, especially if you're targeting a slightly older target audience, but it also can represent a threat. If you're a business that focuses on younger people, children, and youth, and that proportion of the population is actually declining, then that could represent a threat for your business.